I'll set up the audio. I hope that the audio is coming in okay. And all right, let's see if your levels are all right. Again, I'm always having to check this. Just try and speak.
Hey.
I mean, out of everyone, Randy Savage is my favourite legacy character.
I mean, okay.
Yes. Mostly because he was in Spider-Man. And he's a wrestler, but he became a different wrestler.
Anyway, so welcome to the Betarians podcast again. This week we're going to be talking about legacy characters, but beforehand, I guess we'll go through some announcements. In a couple of weeks' time, we're going to be starting another podcast called Campfire Stories, where basically, pretty much I'll try and get a couple of guests on every now and again, and the whole concept is the reason I started this project and the reason why I have such a passion for it is I just really love storytelling, character development, in-depth looks of stories, campaigns, whether or not it's just tabletop RPGs, or even just fictional storytelling. Stories always amaze me, and I'm always so interested on them. Deep lore and thinking quite deeply into the story, or even just talking about how interesting the story is, or even just sharing stories. So we'll be doing that. It will be called Campfire Stories. I'll try and get a guest on every other week, but yeah, it will take a couple weeks before we're fully sorted out with scheduling on that, so look forward to that. And the other announcement is this Sunday we're going to be doing our second episode of the Animite Fables, which again is our dev plays, which pretty much is us as playtesters and game developers. We have made a campaign and we get all of the playtesters to play it, and we stream it, and then if anyone has any feedback, we then take that into consideration as we change the balance of the game, because again, we're trying to develop the game Animite Tales. So if anyone has any feedback from the last session, obviously let me know. But last session we had it where you guys were fighting some goblins, and it didn't exactly go the best of ways that it could have gone.
I don't know what you're talking about. I think that was flawless execution.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
it's all part of the plan.
As always, I'm joined by Alex, aka Obscuricom.
Hey.
And Sam,
aka Master of Plans.
And Sam. Sorry, your audio cut out there. So.
Okay, our face. Master of the Good Plans.
I mean, it should also be known that he is a very, very cunning liar.
Yes.
Everything he says is a lie.
Deception is my middle name. That is also a good lie.
That's the worst thing, because I'd believe that if it weren't for the fact that I just said that you're a liar.
Bum bum. Look, how do you know what I'm saying? Anything is the truth. It could be I know nothing of the Greek mythological.
I mean, that's true. But anyway. Speaking of subjects that we spoke about last week, how about we talk about a subject this week? If you've already seen the title, then you guys already know where we're going with this. But this week is legacy characters. To consider what a legacy character is basically a character has to have a name, a moniker, even just some particular thing that they pass down to someone else or pass on to someone else. It can either be a specific title, a power, or even an ideology. Usually that means that the character is at least keeping on the legacy of the first, or at least of the previous person who kept on going with something. Now, it doesn't need to be something so tangible as a weapon or an object or a power. It can be something as simple as a title or a name, similar to in superhero genres, I guess you could say. They're hero names. Or the same with villains, with their sort of villain names and reasonings. But I don't know, what would you consider is a legacy character? Do you think that I got it in in one, or do you think that there's something else that you would add to what a legacy character is, or what makes a legacy character?
Sam might have some opinions because he was.
Sam, opinions? Never.
I should say close enough, for my books.
Okay.
Close enough. You mentioned the moniker, the title, and occasionally, depending on, usually it only happens if it's like a different gender of hero. It'll just be like a weapon or an item they used, and they'll get a slightly different name.
Okay.
But close it, yeah, pretty much.
What do you think, Alex? Do you have any extra things that you want to add to that, or have we both summed it up?
I think so. I just think that it has to be like not just the name; it's sort of like the spirit as well of the character. Just going on like, just getting around certain things like, different names. Like they'll have the namesake, but they'll have something else. Like, I would consider maybe possibly like Spider Gwen or like the Spider Woman as a sort of legacy character in some iterations, even though she doesn't have the same name. But it's like, yeah, it is sort of continuing the legacy.
Yeah.
Still, even though she is kind of, I mean, she's sort of an odd one. Or Gwenpool, for example, that is a totally different character from Deadpool, and a different costume, but it is still kind of carrying on the spirit of Deadpool and the moniker Deadpool.
I don't know. What do you
Yeah.
think on that one, Sam? Do you agree with that? I'd say that Gwenpool is almost like a fan character rather than a legacy character.
I would say only because the fact that Gwenpool has the ability to perceive the universes as Deadpool does and knows that she is a comic book character. And the reason she's calling herself Gwenpool is because she knows of Deadpool. I would possibly clarify that as a legacy character.
But
only because from a meta narrative standpoint, she knows of who Deadpool is and of who she's essentially copying.
Is that really a legacy character though? Because again, I mean, a character that is taking, if anything, that is the darkest evil of all, plagiarism.
I mean, really, that meta plagiarism. Really, are we going to police that?
I don't think it's so much.
I'm not enforcing it. But...
I'm not enforcing it. I'm just pointing it out. I'm making a citizen's arrest.
It's more of an observation.
It's more like a mimic. Like mimicry is the sincerest form of flattery. Maybe. Not so much maybe. I don't know. I don't think it's plagiarism because they'd be plagiarizing from themselves.
Oh no! I meant in universe. I didn't actually mean like
in universe.
Then it's going into dangerous territory of like, having all kinds of like, different Spider-Mans as plagiarism.
Yeah.
Technically, Japanese Spider-Man who comes with the fucking moon.
Okay,
like...
so most
no, from the planet Spider, Alex.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my bad.
Okay, right. Well, before we get
now.
into that, let's just take a moment. So really, what we have to lay down some rules. The rule of it has to be a legacy character has to be taking something from someone, either by their permission or that their permission is no longer able to be given. In other words, in the terms of you are now Batman because no one else can be. You are now Spider-Man because no one else is. I dub you this character or this hero or this villain because I can no longer be them. Or even take on my ideologies, my power, my weapon, and make something else out of it. This item is the legacy of what I give to you. So we have to say that it has to come from something. It can't be someone copying or even doing something different. Doing something similar. So I'd say Gwenpool is more of a copy character rather than an actual legacy character, because she doesn't take it from Deadpool. Deadpool doesn't give her any abilities, and although that she has similar abilities, that's the same thing as saying, well, technically, Superman and Superman and Wonder Woman, those two are legacy characters because they both have similar powers. It's like, no, they have similar powers, but they're both two completely different characters who had no relation to each other upon their creation and conception. But even further, having it that even if characters have two similar powers, it doesn't make them legacy characters. It doesn't make them the same. I mean, as we've also seen with Deadpool, there are other people who have his healing factor. In fact, Deadpool actually gets his healing factor from Wolverine. He's not a legacy character of Wolverine, though. He's more of a got a copied power, or even an essence of his power. Although in the film they actually state that he gets it himself. But in the comics, he's nothing like Wolverine. He doesn't act like Wolverine, and he is his own character. So I'd say Gwenpool is her own character, despite that she has a similar moniker and similar either mental health effects or even just psychic abilities, because we don't really know if meta-knowledge is an illness or a power yet. So,
well, when Deadpool has it, it's a mental illness, I think, but everyone else is a power.
But yeah, so those are the ground rules. So that then at least we don't go everyone's a legacy character. We have to have some ground rules. So that's the ground rule, or at least those are the ground rules. Has to come from something. Has to have either been given or taken in the terms of has to have been given by purpose, or is serving a purpose when there is no one else left of that specific line. So, for instance, when Batman dies, he can't state who is the next Batman, but someone then takes on the mantle of Batman in his stead. That is a legacy character. Even if they do not take any of his ideologies, if people know him as, or know them as, as Batman, then that's what they have to. That's it. That's when they go, okay, that's Batman. So at that point, that's legacy. Even if it's sneaky and cheeky. And it wasn't allowed. It has to be that thing.
No, I get you. I get you. I hope the viewers at home get you as well.
Yes, I hope so too. Either way,
especially you, Connor.
Either way, I guess you could just say the rules are pretty much the title or something has to be passed down, and people know that it is of that legacy, or at least they attempt to keep that legacy as a piece. It cannot be a copy of powers and a copy of name, because otherwise it's then a derivative character rather than a legacy character. Because they're not gaining something of that character; they're just copying or imitating, or as you said, mimicking something similar to that character. I mean, it's the same. Okay, here's my first example. Actually, Izuku Midoriya from My Hero Academia. He is a legacy character because he's taking on the legacy and the powers of All Might. He's not becoming All Might, and he's not even going to guise himself as All Might, but he wants to become the next symbol of peace. He wants to become the next number one hero, and he wants to master his powers just like All Might did to become a strong and powerful hero that everyone can see and feel calm when he's there. So that's what I'd say. He's not mimicking him at all, and although he is a predecessor of his power, he is a completely different person and a completely different character, but he is taking his ideologies and his power as the next part of that legacy, of that power, of that, I guess you could say, just that legacy of So that's the legacy, just the next best hero. Sorry, continue.
Go for it.
Okay, do you want to go next, Alex, or do you want me to go next?
No, you go next, because, I don't know, because I've got my I kind of want to talk about the villain's example, but I think we should have some heroic examples first,
I mean, I've got loads of examples. The first one I was going to go for, actually, only because it's amazing, is the Flaming Torch. It's technically a legacy character. Because back in the 40s, there was a Flaming Torch who was an android, who was always on fire until he got special paste, essentially that allowed him to look human. And the reason I say this is amazing is because canonically, the Flaming Torch killed Hitler.
Okay.
Which is amazing. But nonetheless, the person that most people know to be the Flaming Torch is, of course, Johnny Storm of the Fantastic Four. who has actually met the android version of the Flaming Torch on many occasions, has fought him, and has actually helped him to become Vision now, or at least part of him.
So my question is, Sam, is he
Yes.
so is the original Flaming Torch? Did he give that moniker to the Flaming Torch, or did people name him the Flaming Torch based off of the original moniker?
I believe it was based off the original moniker because kind of between that point of I think it was like roughly 55 odds. The Flaming Torch disappeared.
Okay.
So he did. From what I essentially gathered, he essentially was like in like almost like a coma underground.
So it's like in
And-
his place, came Johnny
And
Storm.
who had almost his exact same. He had his exact same powers. Of
I
the
love
ability to just.
I love this because behind the scenes, like this is a lot of just comic book history. Like outside of the narrative, it's just oh man, they really like this Flaming Torch guy. We don't really know what to do with an android. Yeah, let's put them in the Fantastic Four. Let's call him the Human Torch. And then later, it's people like, man, we gotta make this make sense with the lore.
Actually, that's
Yeah.
a point then. So was the android originally called the Human Torch or the Flaming Torch?
Oh, sorry, I meant the Human Torch. Even sorry.
I was going to say,
Sorry. Yeah, my
so
stupid brain.
was
No,
the
yes,
android called the Human Torch?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. He's called the Human Torch. I misspoke there. He was the Human Torch back.
Aha! I have something about this. So okay,
No,
so basically, when Johnny Storm became
the Human Torch,
gaining his powers from originally from cosmic rays. So he gained those powers, and then obviously he eventually either named himself or someone else named him the Human Torch. Is that really a legacy character? Because he's not really taking on any other legacy other than the moniker. And do a lot of people know the Human Torch originally was an android or a person? In other words,
he did again. He did kill Hitler.
But do people in the universe know that he killed Hitler? That's my point. Other than that, it's just another character that just so happened to have the same sort of name. Kind of like if a guy was like, I'm some kind of man with superpowers. I must be man of super. And then eventually goes, oh no, Superman sounds way better. And then eventually just a Kryptonian flies on down and like, hey, hang on a second. Just so happened to have my name.
I think they do. He was like Captain America, where he did help fight the Nazis back in the day with like the other. Like,
but Captain America is passed down from one person to another, whereas Human Torch, I'd say he's not a legacy character. Only because that we set the rules up for a particular reason.
Okay.
They just so happen to have a similar name.
And have met.
And have met, indeed, yes. But then again, as we said, Gwenpool and Deadpool, they must have met by now in the comics.
Probably.
I mean, in that, like, there must have been because, like, he's just crossing over all kinds of universes, and just like doing just to fuck around. So,
do you have any other examples, Sam, that I can't debunk?
Fine. If you want to go that far, then I'll just go with the classic Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Who has had many people take up the legacy. Of course, there's the one most people know by now, thanks to the Spider-Verse, Miles Morales.
My boy.
Who, in the Ultimate Universe, took over from Spider-Man after he got killed by the Green Goblin.
That counts.
There is his daughter, Mayday Parker.
That also counts.
Who took over the mantle of Spider-Girl? I think it was Spider-Girl. In the universe where she wasn't kidnapped by the Green Goblin, but never Mary Jane was pregnant. And there's Miguel O'Hara of the 2099 series, who took over the mantle. Essentially because he wanted to fight off Alchemax. And everyone knew of Spider-Man in that period. So you can't debunk that.
It's actually kind of interesting that you bring this up, because there's also another part of which that he also counts as a legacy character. He actually counts as a legacy character in meta legacy. Because Spider-Man moniker has been passed on in multiple different stories, where there have actually been other versions of him in other stories. And certain people have said that they prefer Miles Morales, Peter Parker, Spider Gwen, Spider Girl. There's loads of different people. Even like with the Spider-Verse, there's like Spider-Man Noir.
Oh yeah, it's the best. So offense, the best Spider-Man.
And it's that thing of there are multiple different forms of Spider-Man that have, in overall, been seen in different comics that are completely in universe, different stories in different universes. But I guess you could say they're almost meta legacy because so many people have a different lesson to learn from the Spider-Man. I guess you could say from the Spider-Man brand. So I don't know. I mean, that to me is kind of interesting.
They did even say Madam Web did once tell them, "Aren't you proud that they're carrying on the legacy throughout time and space?"
Yeah, and I'll even allow that.
Yeah, and of course, I'm going to mention the speaking of Japanese Spider-Man, the classic Toei Sentai series back in the day, back in the 60s, the very first non-animated Marvel TV series. He is technically a legacy character because he takes on the legacy of Spider-Man from the alien that crash landed on Earth when he was fighting this alien tyrant. Yeah, I can't remember the name of.
I mean, before we go into villains, I do actually have to say then, in that case, if we're also counting that, all of the Green Lanterns, because in every single different universe, they're either given the rings place themselves on their hands, or the rings are actually like, what is it? Because either they're given the rings or the rings choose them, and ultimately, regardless, they are all known on Earth as Green Lantern. So they all share the same name, but there's different words. Kyle Rayner, or Kyle Rayner?
Yeah, Hal Jordan.
How dare you speak that name? John Stewart.
Hey, he's not.
I think you mean Parallax.
Guy Gardner. I swear there's another one. I'm missing one.
Yes, there's the original one, but I can't remember what he's called.
Adam something. Adam Scott.
Yes, Adam Scott.
Adam Scott, yeah. And he's the first ever one, and he's like, he gets his powers differently. And then I guess, there is obviously Hal Jordan. Ugh.
Hal Jordan.
I'm not.
Why are you so hateful for Hal Jordan?
He's so basic. He's so boring. He's just. Hey, can we have the most overpowered Green Lantern with like almost no imagination? Yeah, he has the most willpower in all of the universe. Cool. Slap it on. Bam. Best character. And it's like he has no personality. He's not interesting at all.
Did we talk about like John Stewart as well? Because he's like
I said John Stewart.
He
was my first Green Lantern.
I know. I was just about to mention that because it's just kind of weird because he is like the fourth iteration of Green Lantern, but he is like probably the best known, in terms of our generation at least, because he was in the Justice League cartoons. Like he was just kind of everywhere in the comics at the time, and he was just like. It just kind of went. You don't normally see that with legacy characters. It's usually like the second one that's like known at all.
If we're talking about characters that were first ever seen because of the Justice League show, I also have to say, of course, the main man. No, I'm kidding. Not the main man. The fastest man alive, Wally West, who was my first iteration, like my first show to the iteration of the Flash. Only to find out that the first one was actually Barry Allen, and then I was entirely mistaken again because the first ever Flash is actually, what's his name? How did I forget his name? Oh, guy with hat, wings on his hat.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, the one who looks like Mercury.
Yeah, I can't believe even you can't remember it, Sam.
I mean, I'm looking. No offense, I'm going to pretend like I do know it, but I'm looking it up now.
Yeah, I thought so. It's some Guy Garrick. Jay Garrick, that's it. Jay Garrick.
Jay Garrick,
who's the first one. Then it's Barry Allen. Then it's Wally West, and then after that it's then Bart Allen as Impulse, but all of them still have something that they all take from the legacy of always try to be the person that saves everyone. It's more about saving than it is about winning against the villains. And obviously, the best thing about it is they also have a power force that grants them their super speed. Geniusly named the Speed Force. But it is something that every single one of the speedsters have, or at least almost every single one of them as legacies. They all have one of those two different things that is passed on in their genomes, which technically, as I said before, doesn't count as a legacy, but most of them do take up the mantle of being a hero, which at that point is the legacy of the Flash, because eventually when they get old enough, they then take on the suit and the moniker of the Flash. And my first iteration was Wally West. Sorry, go on.
No, and I'm just saying that's just kind of interesting that we don't know about their legacy character. That's a testament to how good these characters and how well the legacy sort of is passed on. Because usually, people complain about legacy characters. It's like, oh, we're just gonna have a knockoff. Oh no, not my Flash or not my Batman and stuff. Or try and like relate it back, like the annoying thing I find about Terry McGinnis and the Batman legacy, where they no, we've talked about this before. The thing that like that grinds my gears about this is that Terry McGinnis is a good legacy character. He's a good legacy Batman, but they ruin it by making him related to Batman by some stupid,
Okay.
Yeah, that's some bullshit, right?
Yeah,
that's
it's at the end of at the end of Justice League Ultimate when they actually confirm that Terry McGinnis is actually a clone of Batman.
That's such bull.
Yeah, in all honesty, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And now that I think about it,
no, it's not.
Well, again, I haven't thought about that exact scene for years, and now that I look back at it, it's like, yeah, as a legacy character, that is dumb, that's boring, and that's stupid, and I hate it.
Yeah,
and it ruins the point of the legacy. No, it
does.
It's the whole Spider-Man thing of like anybody can wear the mask, but rather, Terry McGinnis has taken up the mantle because he is good, and he's different from Bruce Wayne, but he embodies the same sort of ideology that he has and is carrying on his name. To make him related to Batman just kind of like, undercuts that for me, because it's like, oh yeah, he is these things and he is that good because he's related to Batman. He's a clone of Batman. That's why he did it. No, not any of his own merits, not anything that like erupted out of humanity. Like, no, there could only be one Batman, and it's Bruce Wayne, and only a clone of Bruce Wayne could replace Bruce Wayne. I'm like, no, bullshit. Bullshit.
Speaking of Terry McGinnis, he also has his own he's more optimistic. He has his more optimistic values than the original Batman.
However, I will have to say this: there is only one thing that I didn't like about Terry McGinnis. Only one thing, and that was he tries to preach about how he's taken on the moniker of Batman, and he's like, I won't do this, I won't do that, I won't kill. But the very people who killed his quote unquote parents or father or whoever it is that they killed in the first season, they then die. That person is defeated or killed or destroyed or whatever. So at that point, it's easy to preach to the choir when you're part of it, because everyone else that you knew and love is dead, and your greatest enemy is also dead. Like,
technically speaking, no, his greatest enemy is also still alive under the sea somewhere. As far as I can remember, I don't remember him saying he'll never. As far as I can remember, he never actually says, "I won't kill anyone."
Yeah, he doesn't actually make that promise. I think it's just like he won't do it like out of, he won't do it willy nilly. But it's like he does clash with Bruce on these things, because Bruce gives up being Batman because he feels that he needs to take up a gun in order to like protect himself, and he said, nope, can't do that. Nope, I'm going to become a monster if I do that. I'm going to lock this away. And Terry McGinnis is just sort of like, you know what? We have like sci-fi level threats now. I'm going to possibly need to kill them, or at least not save them. Like, it's like sort of like a Nolan sort of Batman thing where, I'm not gonna save you. If you're like if you fall in front of a train, I'm not going to swoop down and save you because you will kill people. I may feel a bit sad about it, but nope.
The best part sorry, best part is to add to that is that some people, Batman essentially, Bruce tells him not to save. He nonetheless tries to save anyway. Like, remember the episode with Mr. Freeze meltdown?
Yes, because cause
Where
in that one, Mr. Freeze is like he's trying like something.
Yep, essentially they find his head remaining after 60 plus years.
Yeah.
And the scientists of the day give him a new body. However, the body begins to like revert back to his like affinity to the cold and inability to survive in like in mild temperatures. And he decides essentially he's going to kill all the scientists and destroy this building that I think was like a generator of some sort.
Yeah.
However, at that point, the big villain of the series, or at least for the first part of the series, comes in. They have a clash, and Batman still, or at least Terry McGinnis, Batman tries nonetheless to save Mr. Freeze
Well, yeah,
after the whole system goes into.
Because he does at least try, because, like, I mean, that is a kind of really sad and complicated episode where, like, he's trying to turn his life around, but, like, people quite rightly haven't forgiven him because he has this whole past, but, like, Terry is still giving him that opportunity because he has actually stated that he wants to change.
He's done all these terrible things. Hey, not in my lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, kinda. Kinda.
I mean, but Terry McGinnis also did some bad things in the day. I don't think it as bad as murder, but that's kind of the whole point. Is he wants to turn over. But
that's just as bad as murder.
And Mr. Freeze,
like murder.
I should say, in that episode, Mr. Freeze, before he reverts to evil, does set up a foundation and does try to do all these good things to make up for the sins of his past.
Yeah.
Like someone even tries to assassinate him, and he essentially just says, "No, it's okay. I've done enough terribleness to this person."
You know what's really great is that he's like a legacy character is in this show, but he's like Mr. Freeze is trying to
create
undo
his own legacy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like a whole like meta thing. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I do find that kind of neat. It is cartoon logic, so it's sort of like, yeah, in the real world, like if you've like genocided a bunch of people, like no amount of giving to charity, it's going to clear your record. It's like, if I was the Batman in that scenario, I'd be like, no.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. That is cartoon logic. I mean, in the real world, giving enough money away to charity does solve all of your war crimes. So, dosh.
I mean, it's just from the cartoon. I think he's only like killed like 4 or 5 people. I don't think he's even killed that many people, from what I can remember in the actual cartoon.
Either way, we're getting ahead of ourselves. So anyway, back to the actual topic at hand. Terry McGinnis, which you've gone over vast amounts, is a legacy character. But Alex, you said that you had ones for the villains. I have one, but I'd like to hear your one, considering.
Well, it's a kind of it's one of my favorite, Batman villains, the ventriloquist.
Damn it!
What? That was the one that I didn't mention. Damn it!
Yeah, I know. Yeah. For everyone listening, before we started recording, Joe and Sam were trying to guess who I actually had in mind, and they were just like rattling off all of the names of all of the rogues gallery in for Batman. And
I named
was just
like, 16 villains.
Didn't get it! I am the alpha nerd!
Oh.
No, but yeah, this is like a very underutilized villain and a very lesser known legacy villain, actually, because when she came along, I'm surprised that she didn't get as much reception, because she just kind of blew my mind, just her whole design. Peyton Riley, who takes over Arnold Wesker as the ventriloquist who operates Scarface, or rather Scarface operates her. It depends on what you think about this, because it's kind of ambiguous as to whether it is just a similar mental break that Riley had that was like Arnold Wesker, and it's actually just a multiple personality that happens to be Scarface, or if the dummy itself has a form of sentience and a kind of the curse was passed on to her.
The concept is For those of you who don't know, Scarface or the Ventriloquist, Scarface is a doll or a puppet that looks like a mobster, a kind of gangster, holding a Tommy gun, and it is like a little puppet. And usually, whoever operates them controls what he does and says. So, supposedly, it is led to believe that the person who wields them acts almost like as if they're the ones who are being sort of possessed or being used so that he can have someone who wields him. It's never confirmed or denied if it's either a piece of technology, a cursed object, or if, again, it's people who get a hold of them who are mentally ill, who then have, again, a multiple personality or a break in their psyche that makes them believe that everything that the puppet is doing is the puppet, not them. Although, as we have seen, some of those who take on this moniker of ventriloquist, they are known as the ventriloquist because Scarface is the puppet on its own. The ventriloquist is whoever takes hold of the doll in question. And yes, I think there's 3. But yes, in any one show or comic, there's only ever been 2. But I think there is a 3rd one because I think they give them a different name. I cannot remember though. So far, yes. But either way, still technically a legacy character because the item that they have in question is Scarface, and also they take on the
personality.
name.
Yeah, I mean, this is a thing I like about Peyton Riley is that it's kind of touched upon, like taking on a legacy because when she's first introduced, or rather Scarface is reintroduced with the relationship dynamic has changed because Arnold Wesker before had been killed, but his relationship to Scarface was kind of a lackey, just sort of like Scarface was kind of keeping him around because he was needed to just move around, really physically, and it's like that's kind of it. He would just bully Arnold, and into doing his bidding. Whereas Peyton is not only a willing participant in Scarface's violence and schemes, is that she's essentially like sort of like a mole. She's like in a relationship with Scarface, and Scarface calls her sugar, and like and sort of like they enable each other quite a lot. Like Scarface, it's like wrong. It's just wrong, and it's just kind of an interesting dynamic because it's still Scarface, but they become so much more violent as a team because of presumably because of Peyton's intelligence as she was originally like a mob princess. She was the daughter of a high powerful mobster and used as like a bargaining chip, for their various wars, but had like her own intelligence and her own schemes and was actually quite successful at crime before, meeting up with Scarface. So it's ambiguous as to whether, Scarface's legacy is more, due to like the curse being passed on and they're working together, or it's just more intelligent because she's more intelligent and has more experience, whereas Arnold Wesker was basically just like imagining what it was like to be a mobster. And Harley Quinn even gets involved in this and says that she doesn't like the new Scarface because she initially thinks that it's just making a mockery of the original Arnold Wesker because he was severely mentally ill, but still had a heart of, just still had a heart, basically, and was trying to break away from Scarface's influence, whereas, like, it's sort of like, it seemed at first that Peyton was just kind of taking the legacy for herself.
To make a name for herself, sort of thing.
To make a name for herself. I mean, it becomes clear later that something, that it definitely looks like that at first, but then when you find out her backstory of the actual mechanics of it, it's like there's something a little more sinister and strange going on. Like she does seem to genuinely believe or maybe it is actually happening that Scarface is just like attached herself to her and it's because he loves her.
For my favorite sort of villain ever in the DC universe, I would actually have to say the Reverse Flash is a fairly decent legacy character, and here's why. not only is Reverse Flash all about destroying the current version of Flash, because, Flash and Reverse, whatever you can do, I can do the same. I am the reverse of you in every single way, as one of the quotes. But one of the reasons why I like it is Eobard Thawne, a guy from the future, then Hunter Solomon, another guy from another future, and then there's another one as well who also takes on the role of Reverse Flash. I can't remember his name, but either way, there's been 3 so far, maybe possibly more. There's also the rival for the Jay Garrick one. He had the opposite colours the opposite colours to Jay Garrick, and later on they used the rival in a couple of other different ways in the TV show and the CW. But the reason as to why I like it is because the concept is always the same. He is a version of the Flash, or at least he has powers similar to the Flash, or at least attempting to copy powers of the Flash, but always is trying to destroy what Flash is. If he can, he will take himself to the point of unexisting himself if it means that he can destroy Barry Allen, Wally West, Bartholomew Allen, any single one of the Flash family. They go so far that it's either Eobard or Hunter Zolomon that breaks them to the point of complete breakdown, or even turning against their own morals, family, friends, even their own powers at one point. In the, I think it's Breaking the Speed Force, Death of the Speed Force, there's a moment where Hunter Zolomon tricks Wally West into believing that if there's a way to break the Speed Force, he can get his kids from an alternate future back. And he does it, and then Hunter Zolomon takes a hold of 3 different powers, granting him super strength, super speed, and telepathy. And this guy does this all while wearing the entire costume of Reverse Flash. And although that they know that he's Hunter Zolomon, he's still known as one of the Reverse Flashes. So, I don't know. To be fair, you guys have probably heard me talk about the Flash mythos way too much anyway, but I still love that villain. He's probably my favourite villain. I know everyone usually goes for, favourite DC villain, and most basic people, that's right, I'm calling you all out, say Joker. But it has to be the Reverse Flash. I'm sorry, you're all wrong. Don't at me.
Honestly, yeah, I kind of have to agree, because it's I wouldn't even consider Joker a legacy character. All of the legacies that he has, I don't think really compare to the Joker himself, the one and only, the original. I mean, when people talk about, my favorite villain's the Joker,
there's a theory that he's 3 different people, which means that if that's actually true, he could be the greatest out of all of them, because let's be honest, he has been downright wacky and silly, downright ridiculously disturbingly dark, or the most evil yet ridiculously genius cunning anyone has ever seen, even outpacing Lex Luthor in the terms of weirdness. But we don't know if that's just him eventually building up over time, or if it is actually 3 different people who have gained this sort of mental illness from being dunked into the chemical waste, and then basically turning into this person and taking on the visage of Joker without having their previous identities whatsoever. But
you know what? It would be so Joker to actually just say, nah, I made that up. It was a gag. I can't believe you fell for that.
I mean, if he has just gone through different phases, then that's fine. But if it is 3 different people, best legacy character, potentially. But
I mean, I don't like it. It's how, I don't know. I don't think it works for the Joker in the same way that having a legacy character for Superman doesn't work as a character. They've reached almost godlike senses of destruction and mischief and just capabilities that it just seems strange to me to actually have a legacy to like pass on to someone. It's like these boots cannot be filled. It's like it
I don't
doesn't. It
know.
doesn't. I don't feel like that.
I
Yeah.
mean, obviously there is the other one, which theoretically you could say is there is also the Spider-Man and the Joker theme, which is if Joker creates a toxin similar to his own personality, or even creates a way of sending his personality into someone or making them act exactly like him, similar to what happens in the Batman Beyond movie, or if someone is able to transfer their consciousness into the person's mind and eventually takes on their life, like with Doctor Octopus and Spider-Man, is that a form of legacy? Because I feel like it is in only one way, which is they take over and they carry on their own legacy through someone else in almost a kind of like similar to anti-hero, anti-villain, anti-legacy character, where instead of I pass this on to you, it's more like I'm gonna use your body, but it's still me.
It's more sort of like a virus than a legacy, really, because he's like forcibly taking over. Like he's not giving it to someone, and he's not like, and they're not taking it from it. It's like no,
True,
I'm gonna use you as a flesh golem
but
of
Doctor
mine.
Octopus does still become Spider-Man eventually when he realizes all of Peter Parker's memories and realizes his reasons as to why he becomes the way that he becomes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you think, Sam? Would you like to wade in on this?
Wait in on how great Superior Spider-Man is.
I was just going to talk more about whether or not you believe he's a legacy character or not.
I mean, I was going to say there are other Doctor Octopuses throughout time and space that actually he does have a legacy as Doctor Octopus.
I mean the specific
Spider. I know as Spider-Man. Oh no. I mean, technically speaking, yeah, because he's not Peter Parker by technicality.
He's taken
and
over
he takes
his
on
body,
the mantle.
and outwardly but the original Peter Parker is dead in because he swaps their consciousnesses.
So quite literally, he's taking on the mantle of Spider-Man. So he's taking over more than just Spider-Man. He's taking over the mantle of being Peter Parker as well.
It's a unique case.
I would say yes, technically. Because he's got a different mind. I would say he's a legacy character.
So as we've seen before, people can take over another person's body either through soul or mind or memory transference, and they live horrible or completely different lives. And although I guess you could say it's somewhat horrible and somewhat different, he still ultimately takes up the mantle of being Spider-Man whilst in that form, and people still know him as Peter Parker.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
I was actually going to say legacy characters. We talk a lot about storytelling. We talk a lot about how we use it through tabletop RPGs and a lot of our different campaigns and sessions and stuff. But in D&D, Animite Tales, and in anything, even in Call of Cthulhu, I mean, legacy characters are more just characters that have the names of someone who might be in the story as a background or as a major piece. Like, oh, there's this vampire lord called Count Doom. Oh, that's interesting. We have a Jennifer Doom in our party. Any relation? And they're just like, I mean, I didn't want to tell you guys, but so I don't know. I think they work kind of weirdly. I feel like it really depends, because obviously you could make a secondary campaign after your original one. It's like they're the next generation who have seen these heroes and wanted to become exactly like them, or they are related to them in some way, shape, or form and taking on their legacy through either weapons, items, powers, or ideologies. But I don't know why, but I feel like when you're playing as them, they're not as intriguing. Whereas like the difference between being able to play as one and being able to read or see or watch or view or hear about one. Because obviously when you think about it, if you guys know quite a bit about Miles Morales, he says jokingly, knowing that they know quite a bit about Miles Morales.
Oh really? Who's that?
Do you mean Arachnakid?
Is that I'll get to Arachnakid. No, is the fact that like when he first becomes Spider-Man, he loves the concept of Spider-Man, but when he first becomes it, he wants to be a hero. But let's be honest, he never stops and thinks, "Man, I am such an incredible character. I'm so interesting being a legacy character." Never thinks that. He just does the things that he does, and only we as the viewers or people looking over after time are like, man, that was an incredible thing to do to take on that mantle rather than become your own hero.
Also,
I mean-
it's like
I mean-
in the comics as well. It's kind of informed, by like, the actual world itself. Like he's actually when he first discovers his powers. First of all, he doesn't ask for these powers like they're it's stored in a spider that is actually in a stolen backpack that just happens to crawl out and bite him. From the labs. The story. But
Yeah.
his first reaction isn't to like because Spider-Man is still existing in that in the Ultimates universe. He's just doing just fine. But his first reaction is to kind of freak out a little bit because it's like, oh shit, that means I'm a mutant. It's like, no, wait, I'm not a mutant, but people are gonna think I'm a mutant. Also, I'm a black teenager. Like I have no fucking experience in this. Just like, you know what? I'm just gonna keep a lid on this. And then Spider-Man goes and gets killed. And he has such incredible amounts of guilt over this because it's like, I let my fear dominate me, not take it up. So now I kind of have to take up this mantle because there's no more Spider-Man. And that's, I mean, I mean, there's no way he could have predicted that, but he still kind of blames himself for that because it's like, well, it was sort of greatness was thrust upon him.
Wow, how selfish
Yeah.
of you to blame yourself for something you had nothing to do with.
And also the first time he does go out, if I remember correctly, he does put on like a mimicry of Spider-Man's costume,
Yeah.
and most of the people don't like that because that's.
Junior,
I mean, Captain America doesn't like that.
I'm
one
a
likes
Spider-Man
that.
fanboy.
That was
kinda
because he
is.
just died.
It's not. Yeah, it's like, whoa, too soon, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
It would be great if even the mugger who he's trying to stop goes, whoa, 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 too soon, my guy. Puts down the knife and goes, I'm bored. I'm not bothered mugging this guy no more.
I'm so offended right now.
I'm gonna go back
Can't
to the
even handle it.
priesthood.
Yeah, I can't be handling this.
But
Get out of here. No, I kind of like that as well though. It's like in terms of like narrative, he doesn't sort of like say, "Oh, I've gotten bitten." Oh yeah, oh geez, so that means that I'm gonna take over Spider-Man. It's like it's a real sort of moral quandary for him, and just sort of like, but I didn't want this, and like I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, that carries on into the film a little bit, where he feels that he has to fill these huge shoes because he's got similar powers, and that there's no more Spider-Man anymore. But it's like he really does. It becomes clear he really doesn't know what he's doing, and part of the fun is seeing him build himself up so that he is equivalent to the new Spider-Man.
And that also does take account into the actual video game itself, the Miles Morales game that came out in December time, where I take it none of you have played it yet.
Oh, no.
Not yet, no.
I want it.
Where essentially the first part is that you just being like the Robin to the Batman of Spider-Man, where you're just essentially just following him and he's teaching you how to do things, and you have a fight with Rhino. And then just after that, Peter Parker gets to leave and go on holiday with MJ to like Venice for a reason.
So that then they can stop elementals off in that region. Wait, did I get my Adventures crossed? Okay,
and essentially then Miles kind of forms his own, pretty much becomes the Spider-Man of like Harlem. He pretty much finds his own identity as Spider-Man without needing to be the Spider-Man of Peter Parker.
Yeah.
Yeah. He saves the day. Admittedly, he does like Spider-Man, kind of almost caused the end of the world. But
Well, I mean, what Spider-Man has, that means he's more Spider-Man than ever, isn't he?
yes, exactly. He's so good at being Spider-Man. He's also caused the bad things to happen.
So, okay, so here's a question for the two of you then. Knowing what we know about other legacy characters, say for instance, if you guys were playing in a campaign, or even building your own campaign, either as a DM or as a player, what would you think would make a good legacy character?
Depends on where you're starting from, because like if you're like starting the campaign like from from ground zero, just zero levels on anything, it would be good to have a kind of Miles Morales sort of a storyline going on where you are building up your character and like filling in the legacy, of your predecessor, like just building it up from scratch. That's part of like what we find entertaining about your legacy characters, especially if they've just been born or they have to fill some shoes to fill. If you're starting at like a higher level thing, I would say that you would have to have a legacy character which, is markedly different from the legacy you're building from. Like you've already gone through like the training montage and everything, but there has to be something to see. Otherwise, you're pretty much just playing as the legacy that you're basing yourself on, which isn't a bad thing if you want to do that. But if you're like having a compelling narrative, there would have to be like something else, something to differentiate you, and sort of like how you're doing it in your own way, or like what difficulties you may face, even though you have the same powers but not the same reputation. That's what my feeling on it.
What about you, Sam?
I do have to agree with Alex in that regard. The only other way I would maybe do it is like it's almost like the Teen Titans run, where essentially you are like maybe like at start off you are just like the sidekicks of the characters, and maybe as you level up, that's when you become like part of the bigger legacy. Is that you have to essentially take over from them, maybe because they retire or something like that. But I would, yeah, probably Alex's idea of pretty much having the same powers, but also having to forge your own identity and destiny.
I think, in my opinion, as someone who has had to be the forever DM, I would probably say that the two best ways is similar to the Miles Morales sort of Izuku Midoriya thing. It's that thing of there is a big character that your character looks up to, that they are either a pro hero or they are a hero that everyone knows, or at least is famous in this particular way or circumstance, and that they have either powers that are similar or the exact same powers, and you're trying to use them either as a teacher from afar, almost like, okay, I've seen all of these different things and I've heard his ideology like 1,000 times. I know what I need to become or how I need to act to become this exact kind of hero or villain. Like, I've seen the kind of way that they act and what kind of powers they have and all this sort. And then, trying to build that up over time, either starting from nowhere or starting from high up, but still nowhere near at the same level as this dude. But then going to another one, I think probably another interesting way of doing it in a campaign is having it that you don't know that your character wants to become anything, and then eventually either having it that, like, at the end of that campaign or even at the end of that moment of your character being in that story, you could then just go, all right, after this moment, I'm going to then have it that, like, once they've made a name for themselves, in the next campaign, if it's, like, X amount of time left, or X amount of time after, I would very much like to play a character who wanted to be one of the party's members, like, the legacy, or they are. Kind of like a swap around. Like, especially in our system, the way that you could do it is, say for instance, like Aspen, Hawk, Phileas, and Zinzarina, like, they all retire, but then, like, we have it like, oh, it's a few decades later, and there are either people who have the same powers or people who have taken on that sort of idea of, like, oh man, back in the day there was Phileas Sol, and he had like super strength and durability, and his whole thing was like never backing down, and being the judge, jury, and executioner of whether or not a person was worthy to be considered a human or a person because of like how much of a monster they were inside, not outside. Or oh man, Hawk was all about speed and precision and making sure that people were taken down before anything got bad. Or Zinzarina was just literally about following within the footsteps of whatever her god told her to do, but then ultimately trying to win the battle through just straight up trying to win as fast as possible, through just literally just annihilating. And then you had like Aspen, where it was like, well, the concept of this is we need to make sure that everyone is healed, everyone is fixed. The top priority is healing, not damaging. And it's that thing of like, they don't necessarily need to be descendants of them, but they could actually be like characters as like, oh yeah, I have nature manipulation, but I don't have biology manipulation, but I still believe in what Aspen was saying. Or oh yeah, I have like super speed and super strength, but I don't have the fire and the resurrection ability that Phileas had, but I still believe that like his way of like strict punishment and basically always trying to be like as powerful as he can would be the way. What's going on there in the background? You got?
Oh, is that me?
Yeah.
I do apologise. The bathroom is currently being fixed, so I will go to the next room.
Oh dear.
I was about to say that's one hefty mobile that you have there. You should have.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Relatively. I mean, to be fair, that was pretty much just the end of what I was pretty much saying. Really, it's just that I think the two decent ways that you could do it is either having that there's one or multiple of the members of the party attempting to.
There we go.
Look up
Is that
to.
better?
Oh, not really, but it's okay. We're wrapping up anyway. But yeah,
Right.
Either way, the concept is pretty much if you're in a campaign, the best way that I see it is if you were to literally build it up as you have at least one or multiple people trying to get to a specific level of all of them have their own personal heroes. And the way that I've done it a couple of times is I actually build them if they don't already have it in the module or the campaign. Like, okay, come up with this character and I'll build them out to be like this really powerful character. Because either you're trying to overcome what they are, or you're trying to eventually defeat them. Either because you're the villain that wants revenge, or the hero that wants revenge against the villain, or you're the villain who looks up to this other villain and you want to become them, or you're the hero that looks up to this hero and wants to become them. That's one of it, and the other way is obviously just the other idea where it's only one of them, or even it's again you're trying to become like a previous character in some way, shape, or form, either because you're a descendant or because that you have tried to take on their mantle. I think that's the only way that you could do a legacy character. I think it is pretty fairly linear, but there's a multitude of different ways that you could do it. Either giving the players more challenge towards it, or even having it that you need to reach this specific thing and then be appointed by that person to take on the legacy. Or at least do the Robin thing where it's like, look, I have the same morals, but I might very well be my own person, and that's the way that I'm going to be a legacy character. Instead of taking on the moniker, taking on the ideology. That that drilling is definitely definitely persistent. Either way, I guess we'll wrap it up here then. To be fair,
Yeah.
Thanks again, guys, for joining us. I'll come up with the next week's next week's subject, and then we'll focus on that. But as I said, if you guys are interested, stay tuned for Sunday, as we will bring you the next week's Animite Fables, and you guys will get to see exactly how well they face off against 14 more goblins. Are you ready?
Indeed, and hopefully Sand's drilling.
Hopefully, I mean, this is it's under construction, shall we say? The next podcast.
Yeah, that's how it works. But yeah, if you guys liked anything, if you wanted to post any comments about exactly what you'd like the next subject to be, let us know. We've got about a week before we have to decide, so obviously if you guys actually have that, let us know. If not,
Yes,
I'll
Connor.
come up with something at some point.
Tell me Friday.
But yes, if you guys like this, obviously like and subscribe. Check us out on the Betarians YouTube channel, as well as checking out our Twitch, which is Joey the Mystic. I remembered this time. So if you guys are interested in that, take a look. And obviously we have the Animite Tales Twitter. We make content at least once a week, although we're going to be trying to add a few more things, such as campfire stories, and obviously once every other week we also have our Animite Fables Dev Plays campaign. So if you guys are interested in that, keep checking us out. And thank you very much for staying tuned. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
I will see you in the future.
Ciao, ciao for now.